So I saw someone online talking about the fact that they had written a whole book, a whole novel, without once using the letter E. And straight away, my mind was whizzing because so many words include the letter E. I mean, he, she, they, the. How are you going to write a book without using any of those words? How are you going to write a whole book without using the letter E? Well, obviously, you know me, I had to get myself a copy of it. Like, before I even had a conscious thought, I was ordering a copy of this book for myself. And so it's called Roundabout, which the eagle-eyed viewers of you will notice does not include the letter E. That is a word that does not use the letter E in it. But slight issue is that the author's name is Phong Nguyen, and that word does in fact feature the letter E, but on the cover it's redacted. It's like grayed out. So I'm kind of intrigued, like, are the words just not going to include the letter E? Like, would it just, instead of the, would it just be TH? Instead of them, would it just be THM? Do you see what I mean? Or is he just going to exclusively, even the word exclusively has multiple E's in it, is he just going to exclusively use words that don't include the letter E? I'm not sure. I'm gonna find out, and I thought it would be a fun video to check this out. You know, I haven't done a reading vlog in a while, and I kind of miss doing them. Also, I think that my outfit today is very much giving Tom Nook. Like, respectfully, why does it look like I'm going to tell you the trading prices of turnips on the island today? Except Tom Nook is a crook. All Tom Nook wants is your money. I just want you to sit and read a book with me. By the way, the cardigan is from a brand called Story MFG. You see, it says Story on the sleeve. I'm always on brand. Wait, oh my god, I have to show you the t-shirt too. This is from Bodhi. And look, it has this little dog on it. Come on now, that is sweet. Anyway, there's an OOTD. And if you're choosing not to dress like a character from Animal Crossing, my two questions for you are, number one, why not? And number two, why do you hate fun? So I'm going to be reading Roundabout today, and I thought it'd be fun to share this with you and read it together. So I'm intrigued by this book. I'm as intrigued by it as I am afraid of it. Oh, sorry about that. This is the description on the back. So Ovid Dullen, I've noticed straight away the character's name does not feature the letter E. That's probably going to be quite useful. And I'm thinking, instead of saying he, using like pronouns, it can just always refer to characters by their first names, which of course the author will choose to not include the letter E. So Ovid is this character's name. Ovid Dullen works as an assistant accountant for a multinational corporation and is supporting a family of 4. But abruptly, on his 49th birthday, Ovid runs away from his daily work and his loving family to go on a road trip. Struck by inspiration, Ovid knows that an author is writing about him and will do anything to avoid acting as a protagonist of a book. This is so meta, but his author will not abandon his pursuit and vows to punish Ovid, his wayward protagonist. That's nuts. And you know what I've just noticed? Even the description doesn't use the letter E. The blurb does not include the letter E. There's a review underneath, which does include the letter E, because of course that's written by someone else, but the blurb itself didn't feature the letter E one time. So that means that the letter E isn't only redacted, it's not even present at all. And I'm wondering what the significance of that will be. Like, will that be the big plot twist of this book? And how interesting that it's kind of about someone becoming cognizant of the fact that they are the main character of a book. Like, they are aware that a novel is being written about them. It's a bit Truman Show vibes, which is exciting to me because the Truman Show is my favorite movie. So, okay, let's get reading. By the way, do you love or hate the color-coded bookshelves? Let me know. If I'm being honest with you, this is all I've ever wanted from my life. Come on! Like an old library. This lamp, and specifically that sound, is the primary source of my serotonin. Okay, so let's see. Oh, it has pictures. I love when an adult book has pictures. Let's see. See is a word we're not gonna see for a while because that has 2 E's. Okay, even the epigraph doesn't have the letter E. Boys throw rocks at frogs in sport, but frogs do not croak in sport, but with passion. That is a Bion quote and does not include the letter E at all. Now all I can think about is how long did it take him to find an epigraph that doesn't use the letter E? Like, this book is going to become my Roman Empire. First part. Oh, he couldn't use the word chapter. He couldn't say chapter 1 because chapter has an E in it. Huh. Wow. That really is tough. So, first part. Ovid Dullen was a promising child who would always stay a promising child, a prodigy grown old and sad. Grow as Ovid might, with him it was always a similar thing in dissimilar proportion as a truck gradually grows in sound on its approach. As a child in London, Ovid would sit for hours and do drawings of cowboys worthy of a postcard. As a man living in Wisconsin, Ovid would throw away his Sundays painting portraits of British politicians, both Whig and Tory. If in his childhood Ovid would play mini-golf at an occasional birthday party, in his adulthood, Ovid took up golf as a way of blowing off work. Practicing piano at 4, was now playing piano skillfully, but with no soul, at almost 50. Okay, so this is a book that is going to use only words that don't have the letter E. It's not even that the E is just redacted, it's just not present in the slightest. The letter E is missing in action. Here is the first page, just if you wanted to see it. The letter E has been missing for longer than Kate Middleton at this point. Is anyone else caught on that side of Twitter, by the way? Basically, if you're not chronically online like myself, there is this whole conspiracy theory about the fact that Kate Middleton has been missing, or at least hasn't been seen in public for 2 months. And so the theories are, is she recovering from a BBL? Is she just growing out her fringe? Like, did she get a bad haircut that she needs to hide? Because we've all been there. I feel you, Kate. This time last year, I was in the trenches. Is she going into the Big Brother house? Like, we just don't know. Where is Kate Middleton? And normally, I don't really care that much about the royal family, but last night, did I get sucked into a rabbit hole of where is Kate Middleton? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And now the question is, where is the letter E? And is that going to be a big plot twist in this book, that like the letter E gets brought back or something? Why does the author not use the letter E? I'm still intrigued by the reasoning. So I'm going to read the first chapter and then I will, or the first part, because chapter of course has the letter E in it, and I will let you know what I think. Something I missed the first time I opened the book, but I've noticed now, is that on the inside of the book, it says roundabout, an improvisational fiction by Fong. It doesn't include his surname. So as of the moment you open the cover, we no longer have the letter E, although there is a sneaky one just there. That would be really committing to the bit to even go with a publisher that doesn't use the letter E, but that's pretty tough when the word press has an E. And I'm realizing it's called an improvisational fiction because they can't call it a novel because the word novel has an E in it. This is insane. They couldn't even use the word insane. It's, this is nuts. I'm sitting here reading this book and all I can think about is the fact that this man must have had the thesaurus open. The thesaurus must have been open at all times. Like, I just wonder how many times he Googled another word for example, he's trying to listen at a door, and so instead of putting his ear or his head up against it, he has to put his cranium against it because, of course, that word doesn't have an E. There's some things I keep finding funny. For example, the fact that he was born on April 1st, because of course the words first and April don't require the letter E. You know, he could only have been born in some months of the year. He could only have been born in March, April, May, and July, and August, because every other month includes the letter E. So I guess we're kind of limited in what months this book can take place in, unless he says like, it was the month after August. Maybe when it gets to November, he'll have to be like, 3 months had passed since August. His children are called Aaron and Alyssa. He drives a Toyota. He has a wife called Anna, but she has to be referred to as his missus because, of course, the word wife has an E in it. This is erasure. This puts the E in erasure. So far, I'm terrified and impressed about what this man is capable of. I also realized that his surname is Vietnamese and it's actually pronounced Nguyen, so I'm sorry that I mispronounced that before, but yeah. And of course he lived in Britain, not England or the United Kingdom. And he also lived in India, Thailand, and Hong Kong. He went to Harvard. None of these words feature the letter E. I do love that we get a picture at the beginning of each chapter. It's like a reward. I've also realized that the author won't be able to use the past participle of most verbs because they would end in ed, as in like the past tense of most verbs ends in ed. God, this is actually so tough. I do not envy him having to try and make this work, but he is doing a pretty good job. I have to give it to him. Oh my God, I predicted this. So there's a section where he wants to describe the month of February, but of course he can't say February. So instead he has to say, for a short month, you know which month I'm talking about, that particularly short month following January and prior to March. That's one way around it, I guess. So I made it to part 3 and I started to investigate what this phenomenon is. So basically this is called a lipogram. And a lipogram is a composition from which the writer systematically omits a certain letter or certain letters of the alphabet. And it's a really interesting experimental thing. In fact, in an episode of How I Met Your Mother, there's a scene where Lily and Robin challenge their friend Barney to try and get a girl's phone number while only wearing a trash bag and not using the letter E.
Challenge X. Okay, don't use the letter E. Don't use the letter E. Hey. Damn it. Hi. My word for this guy is Barno.
Can we just go back to my place?
Yes. Damn it!
And it turns out that E is actually the most commonly used letter in the English language. And not only the English language, also French, German, Spanish, Italian, Swedish, Danish, and Dutch. And Phong Nguyen is not the first person to do this in a novel form. Written in 1939, Ernest Vincent writes Gadsby is a 50,000 word novel and there's not an E in sight. If there are abbreviations used, there are only ones that still would not contain the letter E if written out in full. In order to make sure he didn't accidentally cheat, Wright reportedly tied down the letter E on his typewriter. How interesting is that? And then inspired by Gadsby, a French writer called Georges Perec decided to write his own novel without the letter E. This time it was written in French. This was published in 1969. It was called La Disparition and was later translated into English in 1994. And they still managed to omit all of the E's. That is crazy, because one of the first things I thought of was, well, this could never be translated, because how could you stay true to the novel whilst not only translating it into another language, but also not being able to use any letter E's in that language as well. So it was translated by a guy called Gilbert Adair, who had to rename it Avoid because the direct translation would have been The Disappearance, which of course features the letter E. In fact, it has 3 examples of the letter E. That's triple homicide. This one is spinning me out because I'm realizing that it's called Avoid, but he also had to avoid the letter E. Just on so many layers, this is crazy. La Disparition has since been translated into many languages in the same lipogrammatic form, including German, Italian, Dutch, Swedish, Spanish, Turkish, Romanian, and even Japanese. How insane is that? So this is another example of a book like that, and so interesting that it kind of has this history. I'm still waiting to find out what the reason for choosing this was, but maybe I now have 2 other books that I'm going to need to read as well because these are so interesting. Okay, no one panic, but the lipogram has been referenced. So Ovid's friend writes lipograms. So he says, what's a lipogram? Also, there's no way this wasn't intentional. So what's a lipogram? Ovid said quickly just to fill a void, as in the name of the lipogram, the famous lipogram. You limit your words by omitting particular symbols such as A, B, C, or D from a work. Smart. I see what you did there. And then, just to show off, he starts writing lipograms within the lipogram. I also just want to let you know that today's video is very, very kindly brought to you by Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building a website or an online brand. And the best news is you don't need to be good at coding, you don't need to be an expert web developer. This can be your first rodeo because Squarespace has literally hundreds of incredible templates which you can use as the perfect starting point to bounce off of, adapt, customize, and make something that you're really proud of and that really reflects your business. There are also loads of really cool tools. For example, you can set up a blog. There's an option to create an email sign up. And also Squarespace has incredible analytical tools so you can see what people are enjoying, what people are clicking on, and therefore what you should make more of. So if this all sounds good, you can actually get a free trial over at squarespace.com. And then when you're ready to launch your beautiful new website, you can use the code jackedwards at squarespace.com/jackedwards to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. You are welcome. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. And yet another example of speaking around the letter E. Instead of saying this character is from Greece, he says he's an immigrant from Olympic country. I did think maybe we were about to catch the author out because the first section is called first part, so then surely the second section would be called second part, which of course has an E in the word second, but he thought of that. And so this section is called part 2. But then what happens when we get to part 7? Because 7th part and part 7 would both have E's in them. So we have 5th part, maybe he'll just do the number. We have part 6. Oh, and then he just does book 2. And we go back to first part again. I see what he did there. Damn, why did I think I could catch him out? The characters are starting to acknowledge or speculate that there might be someone watching them. So he says, I'm finding it hard to function just thinking about an anonymous man or woman watching us. That's me, I'm watching you. Wow, love really isn't dead. Though Ovid had long found comfort in knowing that many fish swam in the social pond, in Anna, Ovid had found his ovum and was now not happy dining on anything but caviar. If someone said that about me, I would propose on the spot. So I am going to go out. Do you know the irony, the great irony of me wearing this cardigan that says sun powered on it when it is literally pouring with rain? But I'm gonna go out to a coffee shop. There's this little place called Martha's Bakery in Williamsburg. And it's a good place for kind of like co-working, but I feel like I'm getting a bit like cabin feverish. So I'm gonna take my book, I'm gonna go to the bakery, get a little sweet treat, because I've done a tiny bit of work, so therefore I deserve to treat myself, and I'll take you with me. By the way, do you like my little poster on my wall? It says, keep dancing, do not stop. Also, I've just found out there is another book called Ella Minnow P, and in Ella Minnow P, it's basically a book about an island that slowly starts to lose the alphabet. So each letter of the alphabet drops off one by one, and so the text reflects that and is written without using those letters of the alphabet until there are only 5 left. And apparently it's incredible. So maybe I need to do a part 2 to this, I don't know. This is a phenomenon I didn't even know existed, but apparently is quite a big deal. It's kind of hurting my brain a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, like even the prospect, I'm like, how do you do that? But I also have like FOMO, and I need to read these books, and I also want to try it, so I don't know. Anyway, let's go to the coffee shop. I went to Martha's Bakery. I made a real dent in this book. I finally got some progress going. And then after that, I went to a place called Supper, which is a restaurant in the East Village. I went with my friends Mina and Peter and Elena. Here they are. Had a very nice time, had my main character moment in the car on the way home. And now it is the next day, and I'm still working my way through Roundabout by Phong Nguyen. This book is frying my brain a little bit. Like, it is just insane. We'll get to that. But when I woke up this morning, I got ready and headed to the library. I always find that the library is a good place for me to really focus and get stuck into something, really sink my teeth into it. And we're so lucky to have such incredible public libraries. So I've been working my way through this book. And actually the main thing I focused on when I first got to the library was trying to work out the anagram in this book with the character's name, because his name is Ovid Dullen. And at one point in the first kind of 25 pages maybe, the author says that the author's name is an anagram for something, and I am a loser. I am a nerd, and I just love anagrams. So I made it my personal mission to solve the anagram in this book, and I think I might have done it. I basically got stuck for ages and ages on the fact that, well, firstly, I thought the anagram was villain, but then I realized there's only one I in Ovid's name, so it couldn't be villain without repeating a letter. And then the thing that really stumped me for ages and ages and kind of threw me off track was the fact that I worked out that you could make the words void from Ovid Dullen's name, which of course, as I spoke about earlier, is the English translation of the title of Georges Perec's book, the original lipogram, or one of the original lipograms. Anyway, that stumped me for ages because I could not get that out of my head, that a void would be somewhere in the anagram. But I think actually I've realized it's null and void, or void and null. You can make that as a perfect anagram. So I think that is the anagram, I think, but I still don't really understand the significance of that or what it's going to mean. So maybe that's going to be a big plot twist, maybe that's going to be a plot point, I don't know, but I'm pretty chuffed that I worked it out. Especially because, 1, I'm hungover, and 2, I even tried at one point ChatGPT to see if ChatGPT could work it out. This is when I was so stuck in the trenches thinking it was something avoid. And ChatGPT, it turns out, is terrible at anagrams, like absolute dog shit. Genuinely, like, I would have thought that it was something that a computer would be good at, like doing an anagram. That seems like something a computer would easily be able to do because it's just a sequence or resequencing something. But it turns out it's a real weak spot in AI. Like, they cannot do anagrams. You know, my ego is through the roof right now that I outsmarted the computer, that ChatGPT couldn't get it, and I did with this little pea brain. My one brain cell this morning was locked and loaded, and I worked that out. And anyway, I've read another 100 pages, so I wanted to talk to you about them because this book is actually insane. It's weird because at first, when I first started reading it yesterday, I felt like I could tell that something was missing, like just subconsciously in my brain. I know that I did know, and I wonder how long it would have taken me to notice that there were no E's in this book if I hadn't been told explicitly beforehand. Because honestly, the writing style is pretty smooth. You really don't notice it that much. Like now, at the point that I'm at now, I'm not even noticing at all that there are no E's, except for when the author deliberately mentions it, because there are times when he kind of makes a joke about the fact that there are no E's in the book. But at first, when I first started reading it, it just felt like something was not quite right. Like there was something inherently wrong. You know, kind of like when you're watching an episode of Riverdale, like you know that there's something fundamentally wrong with what you're watching, you just can't put your finger on what exactly it is. I think that's how I felt when I first started reading this book. I was like, something is not right. I feel a little uncomfortable and I can't put my finger on why. But now I'm a certain point in, I'm really not thinking about the fact there are no E's. Like I'm you kind of get used to it, which is weird. And I reached the point where Ovid starts to become aware of the fact that someone is writing his story. He says, Ovid was conscious now of an author writing out his history, animating his body, and guiding his actions. So it's becoming kind of increasingly meta. And basically the story is that Ovid has decided to run away from his life, but his daughter, who comes out to him as transgender, decides to come with him too. And this is what I mean by the author being playful about the fact he's not using the letter E. So he says, this is my daughter, or actually my son that I'm talking about. He was so close to using the letter E. Here's another example of like a play on words to avoid using the letter E. He says villain instead of Machiavellian, which would need to use the letter E. So here he says, Ovid did not want an author capturing all his actions. His idiosyncratic way of talking, his tics, his faux pas, his poor dialogue. Alyssa had run away to avoid a watchful sibling, just as Ovid had run away to avoid his watchful author. And then the author starts to contemplate killing off Ovid as a character. So he says, Ovid's author sits at his laptop and thinks about indulging this whim of burning Ovid, of cutting him in two. But as long as Ovid is still his protagonist, this is not an option. His only solution is to annoy Ovid in small ways, such as causing his car to run out of gas only 50 yards from a gas station, so that Ovid has to go out and push his Toyota for a block or two. Or changing highway signs to throw him off track, putting him onto a roundabout. That's always a great moment when the title of the book is acknowledged within the text. It's like a reward. That's always a good moment. Anyway, or changing highway signs to throw him off track, putting him onto a roundabout, a rotary, always circling, switching back, trying to turn, but failing, flailing, falling short of his goal. So I think that's where the title comes from, this idea that the author is in control and the character is just constantly in this cycle. You know, the exits he can take have been predetermined, pre-decided for him. He has the illusion of agency, but actually doesn't really have agency at all. Though he is becoming aware of the fact that someone is writing his life, which is a very interesting concept for a book, I think. But it's also kind of like a double entendre so it has a double meaning because the author has to go about telling the story in a roundabout way. Like sometimes he has to go around what he really wants to say in order to explain it to you. So there's layers. It's like an onion. There are layers. This book went to the Phoebe Waller-Bridge school of the fourth wall just not existing. Naturally, you know by now who Ovid's author is and that I am it, and that Ovid is a victim of a malicious mind busy plotting his undoing. As Ovid's author, I am not just an obnoxious thorn in his foot, I am villainous, a wrathful god wishing harm upon Adam, an Abraham willing to kill his own firstborn son. And then it gets crazier because Ovid is missing. The character goes missing from the author. I'm sitting at my laptop staring into my monitor. How? Well, I was talking to you, clarifying things, going on and on about my war with Ovid, on hiatus from narrating his day in all its minutiae. Our protagonist ran away again, taking his son with him. So Ovid, the character, is now missing. And the author is trying to find him. On his referencing where he's trying to find Ovid, he has A, B, C, D. And I guess E is kind of this mysterious realm outside of the author's knowledge. Also, this diagram of the states, I wonder if the states that are missing are the states that include the letter E. Wait, oh my god. Okay, yes, I found a map. The state directly south of Colorado in that diagram is blocked out. That's New Mexico. Texas also is absent. Nebraska is absent. Only the states that don't use the letter E in their name are featured on that map. So anything to do with the letter E is a blind spot for the author, and that is how Ovid has escaped. Crazy. He put the E and escaped. It's genuinely one of the most insane things and unhinged things I've ever read, and I'm really enjoying it, I have to say. Okay, update. I think we found the point where the letter E has its significance. So this is how Ovid distinguishes himself as separate from his author, because Ovid has access to the letter E. Ovid's journal is utilizing an unfamiliar signal which looks similar to an F lying on top of an L. His book is full of this symbol as though it was as common a thing as A or as I or as O. This is how Ovid avoids my authorial spotlight. I'm thinking that the significance of the letter E is basically meant to mean that we're constantly aware of the process of creating and of being written and the presence of the author. Because of the absence of the letter E, we become aware of the presence of the author who is orchestrating that absence. Does that make sense? Like, because it's so intentional that something is missing, it makes us think about what is actually there, and that is the author. You know, some books I think you're meant to read and just totally forget that there is an author. Like, you just feel like a character is speaking directly to you, especially books that are written in the first person. Whereas in Roundabout, we are constantly aware that this is a construction, that there is someone who is like the puppet master controlling everything that's happening, and that is the author. And so I think because this is meant to be very meta and Ovid is going to become aware of the author, the lack of E constantly reminds us as the reader that this is a construction of some description. So I think it's really interesting and it actually really works. Okay, so randomly the next part of the book is designed as a play, and basically Ovid has been found and he's been put on trial, and this is basically telling the story of him being on trial. It's the whole thing is so bizarre. I will say it definitely keeps you on your toes because you genuinely have no idea what is about to happen next. I think this quote here is significant in terms of the craft of writing this particular book. Avoiding words is our only way of writing with any originality. So I guess that must be the author's kind of mentality when writing this book in the lipogram style, because of course so many words have had to be avoided. Speaking of which, Ovid, avoid. Why is it always avoid with you? What is it that you want to avoid? I got it. I knew it. The anagram is in fact null and void. I am buzzing with that. And I also have just found out who the author is, but I feel like I don't want to give absolutely everything away in case any of you do want to go and read this. So I'm not going to tell you who the author is, but it was a fun twist. And the character who is the author also starts to become aware of the actual author, Fong Nguyen. So it's like just stacked and stacked and stacked on top of each other of just this mind-bogglingness. Also, you'll notice there's a Ouija board mentioned and it's missing one particular letter. Oh, and also here at the end of goodbye. I think that the E kind of represents this realm outside of the author's control. He's very self-deprecating too about the art of writing. He says, writing fiction, making up a world, and populating it with conflict and immorality is a symptom of a sick, ungodly mind. And actually it often refers to the writer of this book as some kind of god who is controlling the narrative and what's happening. Like, it is just so meta. This is more meta than Facebook and Instagram combined. And just when I thought we'd reached the point where this couldn't get more insane, now the reader is a character in the book too. So Ovid's wife basically gets assassinated, and as the reader you just obviously read it and you can't do anything about it. The author starts speaking directly to the reader and says, watching is tantamount to doing. By watching Anna's assassination and doing nothing to stop it, it is as though you took the gun and shot Anna with your own hand. So now he basically is blaming the reader for the things that are happening. He says, you are my co-conspirator. You are my complicit spy and collaborator. You owe my soul my own alibi and Ovid's downfall and ruination. So basically, now it's now it's our fault. Now it's my problem, I guess. I got to the end of the book and we basically end up with Ovid returning to the womb and going back in time to the beginning of the story. Which means that the story in itself is cyclical, is circular, is round, is roundabout, because we complete the loop by ending in the same place we started. So the cycle begins again. Oh my God. This is taking years off my life with the amount of brain power it's taking to consume this, but it is really, really smart. This was honestly really fun to read. Are lipograms supposed to be this stressful? Is it me, or in this final diagram, does he kind of resemble a letter E? So, in conclusion, I would give this a solid, 4.25 stars out of 5. It was really fun to read. As a reading experience, 5 out of 5. Loads of fun cultural and literary references. The author is very playful. He has a really fun time with the fact that he's not using the letter E. It's constantly joked about and he speaks around it. Just, I think, constantly making it clear that this is everything you're seeing is so intentional and he's always so in control of everything you're consuming. I do think at times it's a little superfluous. There are scenes that are a little longer than they need to be, but it's such an achievement. It's so fun as a reading experience. So this was a little adventure. I learned about lipograms. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and this has left me with much to think about. Let me know if there are any other books like this that you think I should read. And all the best, stay in touch, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you very soon. Bye-bye.